The blood-red dawn painted the horizon as Penelope Sinclair stared at the letter in her trembling hand, the words blurring through her tears. 5 young faces peered up at her from around the kitchen table, their breakfast untouched, their eyes wide with uncertainty. It was 1878 in Kingston, Nevada, and her husband of 12 years had just abandoned them all with nothing but a hastily scrawled note and empty promises. "Is Pa coming back?" 10-year-old William asked, his voice small in the crushing silence of their modest homestead. Penelope's throat tightened as she folded the letter, tucking it into her apron pocket. "No, darling, I don't believe he is." The weight of Thomas Sinclair's betrayal pressed down on her shoulders as she surveyed what remained of her life. 5 hungry children, a struggling farm, and the harsh Nevada wilderness that forgave no weakness. At 32, Penelope had never imagined facing such desolation. 8-year-old twins Mary and Martha exchanged worried glances, while 6-year-old Joseph fidgeted nervously with his spoon. Baby Elizabeth, barely a year old, gurgled from her cradle, blissfully unaware that her father had disappeared with most of their savings, and the deed to their mind claimed their only hope for a prosperous future. "Eat your breakfast," Penelope instructed, forcing strength into her voice. "We have chores to do." The children obeyed silently, and Penelope turned toward the window, blinking back tears that threatened to reveal the depth of her despair. Outside, the unforgiving Nevada landscape stretched toward the distant mountains, beautiful and merciless, much like the life that now awaited them. 3 days later, Penelope hitched their only remaining horse to the wagon. The small farm they'd built was 2 miles outside of Kingston, and they needed supplies. More importantly, she needed to find work. With Thomas gone, the meager funds hidden in her sewing box wouldn't last more than a few weeks. "William, you're in charge until I return," she instructed her eldest, who stood straight-backed and serious beyond his years. "Keep the doors locked." The town of Kingston had sprung up around the silver mines that dotted the nearby hills. Once a simple trading post, it now boasted wooden sidewalks, a general store, 2 saloons, a small church, and even a schoolhouse. Penelope guided the wagon down the dusty main street, aware of the curious glances from townsfolk who'd already heard the whispers about Thomas Sinclair's disappearance. She tied the horse outside the general store, lifted baby Elizabeth into her arms, and stepped inside, head held high despite her circumstances. Mr. Jenkins, the proprietor, offered a sympathetic smile as she approached the counter. "Mrs. Sinclair, how are you holding up?" he asked, his kind eyes creasing at the corners. "We're managing," she replied, her pride not allowing for anything more revealing. "I've come to purchase some necessities and to inquire if you might know of any work available in town." Mr. Jenkins stroked his gray beard thoughtfully. "Times are tight, Mrs. Sinclair. The mine production's been down and folks aren't spending like they used to." Desperation clawed at her chest, but Penelope merely nodded. "I understand. If you hear of anything washing, mending, cooking, I'd be grateful if you'd send word." After purchasing the bare minimum of supplies, flour, coffee, beans, and a few candles, Penelope stepped back into the harsh sunlight. Elizabeth fussed in her arms, hungry and tired. As she attempted to settle the baby while loading her meager purchases, the wagon suddenly shifted, causing her to stumble. "Whoa there, madam. Let me help you with that." The deep voice belonged to a tall figure who moved swiftly to steady her elbow. Penelope regained her balance and found herself looking up into the weathered face of a stranger. His eyes, the clear blue of a winter sky, crinkled with concern beneath the brim of a well-worn Stetson. "Thank you," she managed, adjusting Elizabeth on her hip. "Nathan Xavier," he introduced himself with a slight tip of his hat. "Just arrived in Kingston yesterday. Looks like you've got your hands full there." "Penelope Sinclair," she replied, studying him cautiously. His clothes were dusty from the trail, but of good quality denim trousers, a chambray shirt, and a leather vest. A holstered revolver hung at his hip, not unusual for these parts, but he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to using it. "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Sinclair." His gaze dropped to the baby, then to the wagon of sparse supplies. "Would you allow me to help you load these?" pried Ward with practicality in Penelope's mind. "That's very kind, Mr. Xavier, but Nathan, please," he interrupted, already reaching for the sack of flour. "And it's no trouble at all." As he loaded her supplies, Penelope noticed the way other townspeople watched with curious eyes. A single woman with children was vulnerable in these parts, and a new man in town helping her would certainly fuel gossip. "You're new to Kingston?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. "Yes, madam. I've been working cattle drives up from Texas, but I'm looking to settle somewhere. Heard there might be ranch work in these parts. The Circle M might be hiring," she offered, naming the largest ranch in the area. "Mr. Miller lost a few hands to the silver rush last month." Nathan nodded, placing the last of her purchases in the wagon. "I appreciate the information. I'll ride out there tomorrow." He hesitated, looking at her more intently. "If you don't mind my saying, you seem to be carrying quite a burden alone." Something in his direct gaze made Penelope stiffen. "My husband is away," she said automatically, the lie bitter on her tongue. She wasn't ready for the entire town to know of her abandonment, though rumors surely abounded. Nathan's expression revealed nothing, but he nodded respectfully. "Well, if you need any help while he's gone, I'd be happy to lend a hand. A woman alone with little ones. It's a hard country." "Thank you, but we'll manage," Penelope replied, climbing awkwardly into the wagon with Elizabeth still in her arms. "I don't doubt it, Mrs. Sinclair," he said with a slight smile. "You strike me as a woman of considerable strength." As she drove away, Penelope could feel Nathan Xavier's gaze following her. She straightened her back, refusing to show the weight that threatened to crush her. 5 children depended on her now. There was no room for weakness, no time for tears, and certainly no place for noticing the kindness in a stranger's eyes. The following weeks passed in a blur of exhaustion. Penelope found sporadic work in town laundry for the hotel, mending for the more prosperous families, even baking pies for the respectable saloon. Each job barely covered their needs, and she often went hungry to ensure the children had enough. William took on the role of man of the house with somber determination, feeding the chickens and tending their small vegetable garden. The twins helped with baby Elizabeth and the housework, while young Joseph collected eggs and firewood. They were good children, but they missed their father and didn't understand why he had left them. One evening, as Penelope sat on the porch mending clothes by the last light of day, the twins at her feet stringing beans, the sound of approaching hoofbeats made her heart quicken. Out here, unexpected visitors rarely brought good news. She rose quickly, ushering the girls inside. "William," she called softly, "bring Pa's shotgun." Her son appeared moments later, the weapon almost as tall as he was, his face pale but determined. Penelope took the shotgun, knowing it was loaded but praying she wouldn't need to use it. The rider came into view against the darkening sky, and Penelope's grip on the shotgun loosened slightly when she recognized the broad shoulders and distinctive hat of Nathan Xavier. He rode a handsome chestnut gelding and led a second horse laden with what appeared to be a deer carcass. "Evening, Mrs. Sinclair," he called, stopping a respectful distance from the house. "Hope I'm not intruding." "Mr. Xavier," she acknowledged, lowering the shotgun but not putting it aside. "What brings you out this way?" "Had some luck hunting," he said, gesturing to the deer. "More meat than one man needs. Thought your family might put it to good use." Penelope hesitated. Pride told her to refuse, but the practical reality of 5 hungry children overrode her reservations. They hadn't had fresh meat in weeks. "That's very generous," she said carefully, "but I have nothing to trade in return." Nathan dismounted with fluid grace, tying his horse to the hitching post. "No trade necessary, madam, just being neighborly." He approached with unhurried steps, respectful of the shotgun still in her hands. Up close, she noticed the changes in him since their first meeting, his face more tanned from outdoor work, his bearing even more confident. He'd found employment at the Circle M, she'd heard through town gossip. "William," she called, "come help Mr. Xavier with the deer." Her son emerged cautiously, eyeing the stranger with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Nathan greeted the boy with a firm handshake, treating him with the respect of a young man rather than a child. "That's a fine boy you've got there, Mrs. Sinclair," Nathan remarked as William helped him unload the deer. "Strong for his age." "He's had to be," Penelope replied simply. The other children had gathered at the doorway, their eyes wide at the sight of the deer and the tall stranger. Nathan tipped his hat to them with a gentle smile that transformed his weathered face. "These must be the rest of the Sinclair clan," he said. "Fine-looking children." After Nathan and William had hung the deer from the oak tree to be butchered in the morning, Penelope felt obligated to offer some hospitality in return. "Would you care for some coffee, Mr. Xavier? It's the least I can do." "I'd be much obliged," he replied, wiping his hands on a handkerchief. "And please, call me Nathan." Inside the modest cabin, Nathan sat at the kitchen table while the children watched him with undisguised fascination. Baby Elizabeth, now toddling on unsteady legs, approached him fearlessly, offering a wooden spoon like a precious gift. "Why, thank you, little lady," Nathan said, accepting it solemnly. The baby giggled, delighted with this new game. Penelope prepared the coffee, sneaking glances at the interaction. There was something disarming about the way this rugged cowboy handled her children with genuine interest and gentle humor. "Mr. Xavier works at the Circle M now," she explained to the children as she served the coffee. "He's a cattleman." "Were you really in Texas?" William asked eagerly. "Did you fight Indians?" "William," Penelope admonished, but Nathan just smiled. "I've been to Texas, yes, and I've met many native people. Most were just trying to live their lives same as us." He took a sip of coffee before continuing. "I've driven cattle from San Antonio to Kansas City, worked ranches in Colorado and Wyoming, even panned for gold in California once." The children listened, spellbound, as he shared stories of his travels carefully edited, Penelope noticed, to omit any unsuitable details. He had a gift for storytelling, painting vivid pictures of distant mountains and endless prairies. "Why'd you come to Kingston?" Joseph asked, his usual shyness forgotten. A shadow crossed Nathan's face briefly. "Time comes when a man gets tired of drifting. Thought I might try putting down roots." When the coffee was finished and the children reluctantly sent to bed, Nathan rose to leave. At the door, he paused, his hat in his hands. "Mrs. Sinclair, I hope you don't think I'm overstepping, but your roof has some bad spots that won't survive the winter rains. I'd be happy to come by on my next day off and fix it for you." Penelope stiffened. "Mr. Xavier, while I appreciate the venison, I can't accept charity." "Not charity," he countered. "Just being a good neighbor, and if it makes you feel better, you can feed me lunch in exchange." Something in his steady gaze told Penelope he understood her pride, respected it even. She relented slightly. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." He settled his hat back on his head. "Good night, Mrs. Sinclair." After he left, Penelope stood in the doorway watching his silhouette disappear into the darkness. His kindness puzzled her. Men like Nathan Xavier didn't typically concern themselves with struggling widows or women with absent husbands, as she'd led the town to believe. That night, after checking that all the children slept soundly, Penelope retrieved Thomas's letter from its hiding place. Reading it again, she felt a fresh wave of anger replace her initial heartbreak. "Found a better claim in California," he'd written. "Too many responsibilities holding me back." "You're a strong woman, Penny. You'll manage." With trembling hands, she tore the letter into tiny pieces, then opened the stove and watched them burn. Thomas wasn't coming back, and it was time she faced that truth openly. The next Sunday, Penelope dressed the children in their best clothes and took them to the small white church in Kingston. As they entered, she felt the weight of curious stares. They hadn't attended since Thomas left 3 months earlier. Pastor Miller welcomed them warmly, though Penelope didn't miss the questioning look in his eyes. After the service, as the congregation mingled outside, she approached him deliberately. "Pastor, I wanted to inform you that my husband has abandoned our family," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I've been reluctant to speak of it, but I believe honesty is best now." The pastor's kind face registered surprise, then compassion. "I'm deeply sorry, Mrs. Sinclair. Is there anything the church can do to assist you?" "I don't seek charity," she clarified. "But prayers for my children would be welcome, and perhaps—" She hesitated. "If you hear of any respectable work, I would be grateful." "Of course," he assured her. "And you must know that you're not alone. Our community looks after its own." As they spoke, Penelope noticed Nathan standing nearby, deep in conversation with Mr. Miller from the Circle M. He caught her eye and nodded respectfully, but made no move to approach her in the church gathering. She appreciated his discretion. The confession lifted a weight from Penelope's shoulders. Though some townsfolk might judge her harshly, as if her husband's abandonment reflected some failure on her part, most offered quiet support. Mrs. Jenkins from the general store pressed a bag of hard candies into her hands for the children. The blacksmith's wife invited the twins to join her daughters for lessons, saying she could use help with her mending in exchange. True to his word, Nathan appeared the following Saturday with tools and lumber in his wagon. William rushed out to greet him, the boy's previous wariness replaced with obvious admiration. "Good morning, Mrs. Sinclair," Nathan called, tipping his hat. "Still willing to trade that roof repair for lunch?" Penelope nodded, unable to suppress a small smile. "I believe that was our arrangement, Mr. Xavier." He worked tirelessly through the morning, William shadowing his every move, handing up tools and absorbing Nathan's patient explanations of the repair process. By midday, the worst sections of the roof had been replaced, and Nathan moved on to fixing the sagging front porch steps without being asked. Penelope prepared a simple meal of bean soup and cornbread, watching through the window as Nathan showed William how to properly hammer a nail. There was something about the man's easy confidence and gentle guidance that made her chest tighten with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. They ate lunch outside on the newly repaired porch, the October sun warming the crisp air. The children peppered Nathan with questions about ranch life, which he answered with good-humored patience. "You have any children, Mr. Xavier?" Mary asked innocently. A flicker of something regret perhaps crossed Nathan's face before he shook his head. "No, I don't." "Never found the right woman to settle down with, I suppose. Were you ever married?" Martha followed up, earning a sharp look from Penelope. "Girls, that's enough questions," she admonished. "Mr. Xavier's personal life is his own business." "It's all right," Nathan assured her. "No, Martha, I never married. Came close once, back in Colorado." He didn't elaborate, and something in his tone discouraged further inquiry. After lunch, Nathan fixed the broken window in the children's room and mended a leak in the water barrel before finally declaring his work complete. As he gathered his tools, Penelope approached him, twisting her apron in her hands. "Mr. Xavier Nathan," she corrected herself. "I don't know how to thank you properly." "No thanks needed," he replied, loading the last of his tools into the wagon. "Though I wouldn't say no to another invitation to Sunday dinner sometime." His eyes crinkled warmly. "Your cornbread is better than what they serve at the ranch." Penelope felt a blush rise to her cheeks, an unfamiliar sensation these days. "That would be acceptable. Next Sunday, perhaps." "I'll be here," he promised, climbing onto the wagon seat. As he took up the reins, he hesitated. "Mrs. Sinclair, I heard at church that you've been seeking work. The ranch cook mentioned needing help with laundry and such. It's honest work, fair pay." Penelope nodded gratefully. "I would appreciate that opportunity. Thank you for thinking of me." He touched the brim of his hat in acknowledgement. "See you Sunday, Mrs. Sinclair." As the wagon rattled down the dirt track toward the main road, William stood beside her, his expression thoughtful. "Ma, I like Mr. Xavier. He doesn't talk to me like I'm just a kid." Penelope wrapped an arm around her son's shoulders, noticing with a pang that he'd grown taller in recent months. "He's a good man," she agreed carefully. "Pa's not coming back, is he?" William asked suddenly, his young face solemn. Penelope drew a deep breath. "No, William, he's not." Her son nodded as if confirming something he'd already known. "Then I'm the man of the family now." She hugged him fiercely. "You're my brave, wonderful boy, but you don't have to carry that burden alone. We all help each other." That night, after the children were asleep, Penelope sat by the firelight, mending one of Joseph's shirts. Her thoughts drifted to Nathan Xavier, his capable hands repairing her home, his gentle way with her children, the subtle respect in his eyes when he looked at her. It had been a long time since a man had looked at her that way. Thomas, for all his initial charm, had come to see her as merely an extension of his responsibilities, a burden to be endured rather than a partner to be cherished. Nathan truly saw her, and that realization stirred feelings she had thought long buried. But Penelope was a practical woman. Nathan was a drifter by his own admission, a man who had traveled from place to place without putting down roots. His kindness might be genuine, but she had 5 children to protect. She couldn't afford to build castles in the air based on a few acts of generosity. Sunday dinner became a regular tradition over the following weeks. Nathan would arrive after church, often bringing small treats for the children: a bag of peppermint sticks, a carved wooden toy for Joseph, ribbons for the girls. For Penelope, he sometimes brought practical items: coffee, sugar, or lamp oil, presenting them casually as things the ranch had extra of, though she suspected otherwise. Late November brought the first snow to the mountains surrounding Kingston. Penelope secured steady work doing laundry for the Circle M Ranch 3 days a week, with Nathan often driving her to and from the ranch in his wagon. The children attended school more regularly now that their immediate needs were met, though baby Elizabeth remained home with Mrs. Peterson, an elderly neighbor who watched her in exchange for Penelope's help with household tasks. One cold December afternoon, as Nathan drove Penelope home from the ranch, snow began falling in thick, silent flakes. The temperature dropped rapidly and the wind picked up, creating near whiteout conditions. "This is turning into a proper blizzard," Nathan observed grimly, squinting through the thickening snow. "We need to get you home to your children." Penelope clutched her shawl tighter, worry gnawing at her. William would have collected the younger ones from school, but they'd be frightened by the storm. "Can we make it?" "We'll try," Nathan said, urging the horses forward. "But if it gets worse, We might need to shelter at the Peterson place until it passes." The journey that normally took less than an hour stretched interminably as the horses struggled through deepening snow. When they finally reached the fork in the road leading to Penelope's homestead, the path had nearly disappeared under white drifts. "The wagon won't make it through that," Nathan declared, halting the team. "We'll have to ride the rest of the way." He helped Penelope onto one of the draft horses, then mounted behind her, one strong arm securing her as he led the team forward. Penelope was acutely aware of his solid presence at her back, sheltering her from the worst of the wind. The homestead emerged from the swirling white, a welcome sight with lamplight glowing in the windows. As they approached, the front door flew open and William stood there, rifle in hand. "Ma," he called, relief evident in his voice. Nathan helped Penelope dismount, then quickly led the horses to the barn. "Get inside," he urged her. "I'll stable the team and join you." Inside, Penelope was greeted by 5 worried faces. "We were scared, Ma," Mary admitted, hugging her tightly. "I'm here now," Penelope soothed, checking each child quickly. "You were very brave to look after everyone, William." "Mr. Peterson came by earlier," her son explained. "He said the storm's going to be bad and that we should keep the fire going strong." The door opened again, admitting a snow-covered Nathan and a blast of frigid air. He stamped his boots and removed his hat, shaking off the snow. "Those horses will be fine in your barn," he reported. "But I'm afraid I won't be heading back to the ranch tonight. This storm's only getting worse." Penelope nodded, practical concerns overriding any potential impropriety. "You'll stay here, of course. We can make up a pallet by the fire." The evening settled into unexpected domesticity as they weathered the storm together. Penelope prepared a simple supper of beans and salt pork, stretching it to feed an extra mouth. Nathan entertained the children with stories while she cooked. Baby Elizabeth perched contentedly on his knee as if she'd known him all her short life. After the meal, when the younger children were tucked into bed, Nathan helped William bring in extra firewood from the covered stack on the porch. Penelope watched them work together, noting how naturally her son responded to Nathan's guidance. "You're good with him," she remarked quietly when William had gone to bed and they sat alone by the fire. "With all of them, really." Nathan smiled, the firelight casting warm shadows across his features. "They're good kids, a credit to their mother." "I worry about William," Penelope admitted, voicing thoughts she rarely shared. "He's trying so hard to be the man of the family." "He's got grit," Nathan observed, "but you're right to be concerned. Boy needs time to be a boy." He hesitated before continuing. "My own father died when I was 12. Had to grow up fast to help my mother with our farm. It changes a person." "I didn't know," Penelope said softly. In all their conversations, Nathan had rarely spoken of his past. "Where is your mother now?" "Passed on 5 years ago, pneumonia." He stared into the fire. "After she died, there wasn't much keeping me in one place." "And yet here you are in Kingston," Penelope observed, "putting down roots, as you said." Nathan's gaze shifted to her face, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. "Found something worth staying for, I suppose." The intensity in his blue eyes made Penelope look away, suddenly conscious of their isolation in the storm-bound cabin. "I should check on the children," she murmured, rising from her chair. Later, lying in her bed listening to the howl of the wind and the occasional crackle from the fireplace where Nathan slept, Penelope contemplated the strange turn her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had been Thomas Sinclair's wife, secure in what she believed was a solid if unexciting marriage. Now she was essentially a widow, responsible for 5 children, and increasingly aware of her growing feelings for a man who had appeared in her life like an answer to an unspoken prayer. The The blizzard raged for 2 days, trapping them all in the small cabin. Nathan proved invaluable, chopping wood, helping with chores, and keeping the children entertained when cabin fever threatened to overwhelm them. He taught William how to play checkers using buttons as pieces, showed the twins how to make shadow puppets on the wall, and patiently answered Joseph's endless questions about ranch life. By the time the storm cleared, leaving Kingston buried under 3 feet of snow, something fundamental had shifted in the household dynamic. The children had fully accepted Nathan's presence, turning to him as naturally as they did to Penelope for guidance or comfort. "I should get back to the ranch," Nathan said on the 3rd morning, looking out at the blindingly white landscape. "Mr. Miller will be wondering what happened to his wagon and team." "Of course," Penelope agreed, ignoring the pang of disappointment. "Thank you for everything." The children were less restrained in their protests. "Do you have to go, Mr. Xavier?" Mary pleaded. "Who will finish teaching us checkers? Who will help with the firewood?" William added pragmatically. Nathan knelt to their level, his expression gentle but firm. "I need to get back to work, but I'll visit again soon. I promise." Before he left, he drew Penelope aside. "I'll be back on Sunday as usual if that's still all right with you." "We'll expect you," she replied, surprised by how much she meant it. Christmas approached, bringing both joy and renewed sadness to the Sinclair household. It would be their first holiday without Thomas, and despite his faults, the children missed their father. Penelope stretched her meager resources to prepare small gifts, knitted scarves for the older children, a rag doll for Elizabeth, and warm socks for William. Nathan continued his Sunday visits, often staying to help with repairs or chores that were beyond William's capabilities. The townspeople had begun to notice his regular presence at the Sinclair homestead, and Penelope wasn't oblivious to the speculative glances and whispers when she visited the general store. "People will talk," she warned Nathan one Sunday as they washed dishes together after dinner. "A single man spending so much time with a woman whose husband has abandoned her." "Let them talk," he replied evenly, drying a plate with careful attention. "I've never put much stock in gossip." "It's different for a woman," Penelope countered. "My reputation affects my children." Nathan set down the dish towel and turned to face her directly. "Penelope," he said the first time he had used her given name, "I have nothing but respect for you and your family. If my presence here is causing problems, I'll step back." "No," she said quickly, surprising herself with her vehemence. "The children would be devastated. They've come to depend on you." "Just the children?" he asked softly, his gaze intent on her face. Before she could respond, Martha burst into the kitchen, breaking the moment. "Ma, Mr. Xavier, come quick, William and Joseph have built a snow fort." 2 days before Christmas, Nathan appeared unexpectedly at the homestead, his wagon loaded with parcels and a small pine tree. The children swarmed around him, exclaiming over the tree as he unloaded it. "Mr. Xavier brought a Christmas tree," Mary announced unnecessarily, dancing with excitement. Penelope approached more slowly, torn between gratitude and concern. "Nathan, this is too much," he shrugged, looking almost bashful beneath his usual confidence. "Every child deserves a proper Christmas. I hope I haven't overstepped." Together they set up the tree in the corner of the main room, decorating it with paper chains the children made, and a few precious glass ornaments Nathan had brought. The parcels remained mysteriously stacked beside it, despite the children's eager inquiries. "Christmas morning," Nathan insisted with a wink at Penelope. "Some things are worth waiting for." That evening, after the children had finally been persuaded to sleep despite their excitement, Penelope and Nathan sat by the fire. A comfortable silence had developed between them over the months, but tonight Nathan seemed preoccupied, turning his coffee cup in his hands repeatedly. "Is something troubling you?" Penelope finally asked. He set down the cup with deliberate care. "I've been offered a position as foreman on a ranch near Carson City," he said. "Better pay, more responsibility." Penelope felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. "I see," she managed. "That's a wonderful opportunity." "It would be," he agreed, watching her closely. "If I were inclined to take it." Hope flickered cautiously in her chest. "And are you?" Nathan leaned forward, his expression more serious than she'd ever seen it. "That depends entirely on you, Penelope." "Me?" she echoed, her heart suddenly racing. "I came to Kingston looking for a place to belong," he said slowly. "What I found was a family, your family." He took a deep breath. "I love your children as if they were my own. And I love you, have loved you since that day I helped you with your packages outside the general store." Penelope stared at him, speechless with the shock of his declaration. Nathan continued, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "I know it hasn't been long since Thomas left. I know you might not be ready. But I wanted you to know where I stand before making any decisions about Carson City." Penelope's mind whirled with contradictory emotions: elation, fear, disbelief, and overwhelming gratitude. "Nathan, the children, take your time," he said gently. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight, just think about it." He stood, reaching for his hat. "I should go, it's getting late." "Wait," Penelope said, rising to face him. Years of caution and disappointment warred with the undeniable truth in her heart. "I don't need time. The children adore you and I." She faltered, then gathered her courage. "I've been afraid to admit how much I've come to depend on you, not just for the help you provide, but for everything else. Your kindness, your strength, the way you make me feel safe again." Nathan stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Is that a yes, Penelope Sinclair? Because I'm asking you to be my wife. I'm asking to be a father to your children, to raise them as my own." "Yes," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes." His kiss was gentle at first, then deepening with a passion that took her breath away. When they finally parted, Penelope leaned her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Should we tell the children tomorrow?" she asked, already imagining their reactions. Nathan chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly under her ear. "On Christmas Eve." "I can't imagine a better gift." Christmas morning dawned clear and cold, the sun glinting off the snow-covered landscape. Inside the Sinclair cabin, soon to be the Xavier home, Penelope reminded herself with a quiet thrill chaos reigned as 5 excited children tore into the presents Nathan had brought. New boots for William, dolls for the twins, a wooden train for Joseph, and a colorful ball for Elizabeth. Penelope had received a beautiful blue shawl and a small golden locket containing space for miniature portraits. But the greatest gift had been the children's reaction to their announcement the previous evening. After the initial shock, joy had erupted, William solemnly shaking Nathan's hand, the twins hugging Penelope and chattering about wedding plans, Joseph asking earnestly if he should call Nathan Pa now, and Elizabeth simply climbing into Nathan's lap with proprietary satisfaction, as if she'd known all along he belonged there. As Penelope watched Nathan help Joseph with his new train, William sitting nearby offering serious advice, she marveled at how completely this man had transformed their lives in just a few months. The pain of Thomas's betrayal hadn't disappeared, but it had diminished, overshadowed by the promise of a new beginning. Nathan caught her watching and smiled, that warm, private smile that made her feel like the most precious person in his world. Later, when the excitement had died down and the children were occupied with their gifts, he joined her at the window. "Happy?" he asked softly, slipping an arm around her waist. More than I ever thought possible, she admitted, leaning into his strength. Are you sure about this, Nathan? Taking on another man's children, 5 of them. They're not another man's children to me, he replied with quiet conviction. From the moment I saw you struggling with those packages in town, something told me you all belonged in my life. I don't know if it was fate or providence, but I'm grateful for it every day. Pastor Miller married them on New Year's Day, 1879, in the small white church in Kingston. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, with the children standing proudly beside them and most of the town in attendance. Nathan wore a new suit purchased specially for the occasion, and Penelope wore a cream-colored dress that the twins had helped her sew, with lace salvaged from her original wedding gown. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Pastor Miller declared, beaming at the unconventional family before him. Mr. and Mrs. Xavier. At the small reception in the church hall afterward, Mr. Miller from the Circle M approached with his wife. Nathan, I hate to lose my best hand, he said gruffly, but I understand you'll be needing your own place now. Yes, sir, Nathan agreed, his arm securely around Penelope's waist. Though I appreciate all you've done for me. Well, Mr. Miller continued, exchanging a glance with his wife, Martha and I have been talking. We're getting on in years, and that north section of our property is more than we can manage. 400 acres, with that old Pearson cabin that could be fixed up nice. He cleared his throat awkwardly. We'd be willing to sell it to you on fair terms. Place needs a family. Penelope gasped softly as Nathan's grip on her waist tightened. That's extremely generous, Mr. Miller, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I'd be honored to consider it. Later that night, after the children had fallen asleep in their beds and the newlyweds were finally alone, Nathan pulled Penelope into his arms. A home of our own, he murmured against her hair. Room for the children to grow, maybe even add a few more someday if you're willing. Penelope looked up at him, her heart overflowing with love for this man who had appeared in her life when she needed him most. I think I'd like that very much, she whispered before his lips found hers in a tender kiss that held the promise of their future together. Spring brought new beginnings for the Xavier family. Nathan had purchased the north section of the Miller Ranch, and they had spent the winter months repairing and expanding the old Pearson cabin. What had once been a simple 2-room structure now boasted 4 proper bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a covered porch that wrapped around 2 sides of the house. Penelope planted a vegetable garden while Nathan and William built a chicken coop and repaired the small barn. The twins, now 9, attended school regularly and helped with the younger children. Joseph, nearly 7, shadowed Nathan constantly, absorbing every lesson about ranching with solemn attention. Elizabeth, almost 2, toddled happily between them all, secure in the abundant love that surrounded her. By summer, Nathan had acquired a small herd of cattle and 2 working horses. Though the operation was modest compared to the sprawling Circle M, it was theirs, built with their own hands and determination. On a warm evening in late August, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of gold and purple, Penelope shared her news. Nathan, she said softly, taking his hand, I'm going to have a baby. His face transformed with wonder as he gathered her close. A baby, he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. Our baby. Are you pleased? She asked, though his reaction left little doubt. Please doesn't begin to cover it, he assured her, kissing her tenderly. When? Early spring, the doctor thinks. March, perhaps. Nathan's hand moved to rest gently on her still flat stomach. The children will be excited. William might find it strange, Penelope cautioned. He's never known me to have a child with anyone but Thomas. We'll help him understand, Nathan said confidently. He's a good boy, young man, really. They all are exceptional children, Penelope. You did that, even before I came along. She leaned against his strong shoulder, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. We did it together, Nathan. From the moment you stepped into our lives. The children reacted to the news with varying degrees of understanding. William, nearly 12 now and increasingly aware of adult matters, offered solemn congratulations. The twins erupted in excited chatter about names and whether they wanted a brother or sister. Joseph seemed mainly concerned with whether the baby would like the wooden horse he was carving under Nathan's tutelage. Elizabeth, still too young to fully comprehend, simply patted Penelope's stomach and declared, "Baby," with proud certainty. As Penelope's pregnancy progressed, Nathan's protectiveness intensified. He hired a local boy to help with the heavier ranch work, insisting that Penelope rest more and William focus on his schooling rather than chores. "I'm pregnant, not invalid," Penelope protested one day when Nathan took the laundry basket from her hands. "Women have babies every day while managing households." "Not my wife," he replied firmly. "Not when there's help to be had." His expression softened as he set down the basket and drew her into his arms. "Humor me, Penelope. I waited a lifetime to find you and these children. I aim to take proper care of what's mine." She couldn't argue with the love in his eyes or the gentle way his hand always found her growing belly, as if reassuring himself of the miracle within. Christmas that year was even more special than the last. The house was filled with decorations made by the children, and Nathan had ridden all the way to Carson City to find special gifts, a proper writing set for William, who showed scholarly promise, sewing kits for the twins, who had developed an interest in dressmaking, a set of carved farm animals for Joseph, and a china doll with real hair for Elizabeth. For Penelope, he brought a rocking chair crafted by a furniture maker in Carson City. "For when the baby comes," he explained as she ran her hands over the smooth wood, tears of gratitude in her eyes. Winter passed in a peaceful rhythm of family routines, school lessons, and preparations for the baby. Nathan expanded their herd slightly and made plans for spring calving. The Xavier ranch was small but growing steadily, a testament to his careful management and hard work. March arrived with unexpected warmth, melting the snow earlier than usual and bringing the first wildflowers to the hills surrounding their home. Penelope felt the first contractions on a clear morning as she was helping the twins prepare breakfast. "Nathan," she called calmly, one hand bracing against the table as the pain tightened across her abdomen. "I think it's time to fetch Mrs. Peterson." The day that followed was a blur of pain, determination, and ultimately transcendent joy. Nathan sent William to bring Mrs. Peterson, who had assisted at many births in Kingston. He organized the other children with remarkable efficiency, sending the twins to stay with Mrs. Miller, keeping Joseph occupied with special projects, and enlisting Elizabeth's help in watching for the doctor from the porch swing. Throughout her labor, Nathan never left Penelope's side except when propriety demanded. He wiped her brow, supported her back during the worst contractions, and murmured constant encouragement. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known," he told her as the pains intensified. "You can do this, my love. I'm right here." As twilight painted the sky in deepening shades of blue, their son entered the world with a robust cry that brought tears to Nathan's eyes. Mrs. Peterson cleaned and swaddled the infant before placing him in Penelope's arms. "He's perfect," Penelope whispered, counting tiny fingers and toes with exhausted wonder. Nathan sat carefully on the edge of the bed, his weathered hand impossibly gentle as he stroked the baby's dark hair. "He is," he agreed, his voice rough with emotion, "just like his mother." He leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Thank you, Penelope, for everything." They named him James Nathan Xavier, honoring both Nathan's father and the man himself. The other children were gradually introduced to their new brother, each reaction a treasure to behold. William's careful pride as Nathan showed him how to support the baby's head, the twins competing offers to help with feedings and diaper changes, Joseph's solemn promise to teach James to ride someday, and Elizabeth's declaration that the baby was her very own, which necessitated gentle lessons in sharing. As spring blossomed fully, the Xavier family settled into their new normal. Penelope recovered quickly, surrounded by help and love. Nathan proved to be as natural a father to the newborn as he had been to her other children, walking the floor with James at night to let Penelope rest, changing diapers without complaint, and singing old trail songs as lullabies. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the children play in the yard, William showing Joseph how to throw a ball, the twins teaching Elizabeth a clapping game, baby James sleeping contentedly in Nathan's arms, Penelope was struck by the fullness of her heart. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," she said softly. "Happy, complete." Nathan's gaze was tender as he looked from the sleeping infant to her face. "When I rode into Kingston that day, I was just looking for work, maybe a place to belong for a while." He shook his head in wonder. "Instead, I found everything I never knew I needed. 6 reasons to stay put for the rest of my life." 7, Penelope corrected with a smile, taking his free hand and pressing it to her heart. "Don't forget me." "As if I could," he replied, leaning over to kiss her gently. "You're the center of it all, Penelope Xavier, the heart of this family." In the golden light of sunset, with the sounds of children's laughter floating on the gentle breeze and the solid warmth of her husband beside her, Penelope knew with absolute certainty that this was what healing looked like, not the absence of past pain, but the abundance of present joy. Thomas's abandonment, once a wound that had seemed impossible to survive, had ultimately led her to a love deeper and truer than she had ever imagined possible. Nathan had kept his promise to raise her children as his own, but he had given them all so much more: a foundation of unwavering support, the security of belonging, and the precious gift of being truly seen and valued. As darkness fell, and they gathered the children for supper, Penelope whispered a silent prayer of gratitude for the unexpected journey that had brought them all together: 5 abandoned children, a lonely cowboy, and a woman who had found the courage to open her heart again. The Xavier family thrived in the years that followed. Nathan's careful management and hard work expanded their ranch operations, eventually making them one of the most respected homesteads in the region. William, with Nathan's encouragement, attended college in San Francisco, returning with knowledge of modern agricultural practices that further improved their prosperity. The twins developed their sewing skills into a successful dressmaking business in Kingston, while Joseph became Nathan's right hand on the ranch. Elizabeth, with her mother's determination and father's charm, excelled in school and set her sights on becoming a teacher. Young James grew strong and confident under the adoring eyes of his large family, joined 2 years later by a sister, Hope, who inherited her mother's auburn hair and her father's steady blue gaze. And at the center of it all remained Nathan and Penelope, their love deepening with each passing season, their shared life a testament to the family they had built together, not by blood alone, but by choice, commitment, and unwavering love.